And also, folks, when it comes to the protests and riots that have swept across the United States, there have been rumors about whether China is involved, which organizations are really behind them, and where their money is coming from. Now, to learn more about this, we've invited to speak with us today Trevor Loudon. He has been researching radical left groups and terrorist groups for more than 30 years, and he exposes these networks heavily as an author, filmmaker, and as a contributor to the Epoch Times. Let's jump into that now. Trevor Loudon, it's great having you back on Crossroads.
Great to be here. Thanks, Josh. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah, so I mean, you and I have worked together quite a bit at Epoch Times, where you work as a columnist, of course. A lot of your work for, 3 decades now or more, has been exposing communist front operations and different radical groups, especially in the United States. And it just so happens that now Antifa, different elements within Black Lives Matter are coming out, protesting, starting riots. You've been at the forefront of saying these guys are not just grassroots, at least the main batch of them. The ones pulling the strings are not grassroots. Tell us about the organizations behind the riots that we're seeing.
Well, most of the rioting is actually being organized by two pro-Chinese communist parties, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization based out of Minneapolis, and Liberation Road, which is the parent body of Black Lives Matter, which is based in the Bay Area and has very close ties to the Chinese consulate there and the Chinese Progressive Association. So you've really got to think this is basically a Chinese-directed movement.
Now, there's been a lot of reporting about the Chinese Progressive Association. As a bit of context for our viewers, basically, there was this donation page for one of the Black Lives Matter leaders. It led to the Chinese Progressive Association. A lot of media, Daily Signal, others, reported that this organization appeared to be tied to the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and tied to Black Lives Matter. This caused a lot of reporting saying, is Black Lives Matter connected to the CCP? New York Times then came out with a piece arguing this was fake. And the basis of that was they said, well, the organization tied to the CCP is different from the one everyone is saying is tied to this one. They said it's a different organization under the same name. What would you say to those allegations?
Well, then they're incorrect. See, there's a Chinese Progressive Association Boston, and there's a Chinese Progressive Association San Francisco. Now, both of them are controlled by Liberation Road. Both of them are controlled by Maoist communists who've been a part of the same groups for 50 years now. They might be organizationally autonomous, but they are part of the same movement. And that CPA Boston is very close ties and does actually official work for the Chinese consulate in New York, and the Chinese Progressive Association in San Francisco is also very closely tied to the Chinese consulate in that city. So they're both pro-Chinese, and they're both front groups for the same communist organization, even though they may be organizationally autonomous. They have their own separate board, etc. But they're certainly part of the same movement.
Now, you mentioned two different organizations which are allegedly pulling the strings behind a lot of these riots. First one, let's start with Freedom Road Socialists. What is Freedom Road Socialists, and how are they tied to China?
Well, they're openly pro-China on their webpage. They have big pictures of Mao and quoting Xi Jinping, and they openly say they are pro-China. And they have been part of the Maoist movement for 40 years now. But they have people visiting China. They have some of their cadre live in China, and they follow the Chinese line. They defend China, say, no, China's not to blame for the COVID virus. China's leading the world in fighting the COVID virus. They completely follow the Chinese line and openly state their support for China on their web pages. So they are the group that sparked the riot in Minneapolis. They have a group up there called Twin Cities Justice for Jamar, and it's led by Jess Sundin, the wife of the leader of Freedom Road Socialist Organization. And I released a video of taking from a podcast she did, admitting that she was the main organizer of the riots, talking about the joy they felt when they saw Precinct 3 being burnt to the ground, and the fact that the violence and the looting and the arson was intrinsically part of the movement. It wasn't peaceful demonstrations being hijacked. She admitted they were intrinsic parts. The violence was completely part of what they were doing. And so they are the same people who burnt Kenosha, Wisconsin, the same people that did riots in Dallas, Houston, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Miami, Tampa, Salt Lake City, Los Angeles, and several other cities around the country, all coordinated through the same group. And the leader of the group, Steph Yorek, the day that Trump was inaugurated in January 2017, said that our job is to destroy the president by making this country ungovernable. Direct quote.
And what was the other organization that was involved with this? You talked about the Freedom Road Socialists. What was the other one?
Liberation Road, which used to be part of Freedom Road, but they split some years ago, mainly over their ties to the Democratic Party. One wanted to work with the Democrats, one didn't. So Liberation Road is the parent body of Black Lives Matter. Liberation Road are the people who burnt Ferguson, Missouri to the ground in 2014. And Liberation Road, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi, the three founders of Black Lives Matter, are all directly affiliated to Liberation Road. And Liberation Road is the communist group that controls both the Chinese Progressive Association Boston and the Chinese Progressive Association San Francisco.
So aside from being tied to the Chinese Progressive Association, do they have any other ties to the Chinese regime, or is the main link through the CPA?
Well, look, one of the heads of, there's an allied group to Black Lives Matter. It's called Asians for Black Lives. And they cross over with Black Lives Matter. They're allied. Two of the leading founders of that, one is Alex Tom, the past president, the past CEO of a Chinese Progressive Association, and the other one is Eric Ma, another past CEO of the Chinese Progressive Association. Alex Tom is directly in contact with the Chinese, embassy or consulate. He says, we go to them, we have direct contact with them, we go to them for advice. I have tape of him saying this. He has also lived in China, and he openly boasts of having contacts with Chinese Communist Party members. So this Asians for Black Lives is a sister group for Black Lives Matter and helps to support them. Eric Ma is also a very close ally of a man called Russell Lowe, an identified agent of the Chinese Communist Party, who was working out of Dianne Feinstein's office, Senator Dianne Feinstein's office, for 20 years. So there's a lot of direct Communist Chinese tie-ups to Asians for Black Lives Matter, the Chinese Progressive Association, and Black Lives Matter. They're all working and intertwined together.
Trevor, I know there was another organization it was one of the radical organizations pushing for race politics in the United States, focused heavily on the black community. And I understand these organizations revitalized this movement right ahead of the riots. Will you tell us about this organization?
You're talking about the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. Well, the NAAPR, that is a front for Freedom Road Socialist Organization. The Twin Cities Justice for Jamal, the people who started the riots in Minneapolis, are the Minneapolis affiliate of that organization. And that was originally a Communist Party front group back in the 1970s. It was set up to free Angela Davis, the iconic black communist who was then being held on murder charges. But they refounded the organization in November 2019 in Chicago with the explicit purpose of agitating racially against the police in this year. It was all timed for election year. So the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression is headed by Freedom Road Socialist Organization Central Committee member Frank Chapman. It is their group, and they are the ones who coordinated the riots all over the country.
And tomorrow on October 7th, Vice President Mike Pence and Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris will be holding their debate. Crossroads will be streaming the debate on our YouTube channel, and will also be hosting a special live Q&A immediately after the debate, so be sure to join us for that. Now, that said, folks, again, we're broadcasting 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. We also do a live Q&A every Sunday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, if you want to support us, please consider joining us on Patreon. You can find the link to our Patreon page in the description below. If you haven't already, also, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps this channel. If you want to go the extra mile, as always, please tell a friend or family member about Crossroads, and please consider sharing this video. Now, that said, please take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and stay free.